Indie games come in all shapes and sizes, often evoking a wide range of emotions: joy, sadness, anger, grief, you name it. Sometimes they also push the boundaries of what can be shown in a video game. Here are 8 indie games that defied censorship and pushed the limits of violence, sex, and more. Before we dive into this list, why not step out of your comfort zone and head over to patreon.com/idreamofindiegames. You'll gain Discord access to the greatest indie gaming community, early ad-free shows, shoutouts at the end of each video that we produce, early podcast episodes, and more. Your new indie gaming community is waiting for you. Let's get the obvious one out of the way. Coming in at number 8 is the indie classic Hotline Miami. This release pushed the boundaries of what can be shown in a video game by offering brutal violence and exploring psychological traumas. It never shies away from being vicious, as players bash heads into the ground, hurl weaponry, and gun down victims in cold blood. They had it coming. Sure, plenty of games have been violent throughout gaming history, but Hotline Miami has a sense of realism that will make the hair stand up on the back of your neck. When you complete a level, you're left to think about your actions, standing there in silence, surrounded by corpses. The game's cryptic storytelling almost makes the player question their choices, wondering if violence was the right solution, while coming to terms with the fact that it might have been the only solution. Controversial for its time, yes, Hotline Miami unquestionably pushed the limits of violence in a video game and remains one of the most thought-provoking indie gaming experiences out there. For me, this is one of my all-time favorite games, and one that all indie gamers should experience, if they can stomach it. Next on our list is a game that you either absolutely love or despise: the shocking indie release, Doki Literature Club. Marketed as a cute little dating simulation title and initially released for free, Doki Literature Club turned out to be anything but adorable. The game ends up being more of a horror experience, touching on themes such as mental illness and depicting extremely disturbing scenarios. If you are sensitive to portrayals of suicide or self-harm, run far away from this title. It's violent, it's creepy, and has gone on to inspire countless releases since it went viral. Regardless of how you feel about the game, there's no denying its effectiveness. The ways in which it messes with the player's head and breaks the fourth wall are unparalleled even today. While some players believe that the game did a poor job in portraying mental health, many fans have spoken out in favor of this release, praising it for sparking the conversation around mental health at all. If anything, Doki Literature Club certainly paved the way for content warnings in games and pushed the absolute limits of what can be shown. Okay, moving on from that nightmare to the next one. This is the first-person survival horror title, Agony. And with a name like Agony, you probably expect the worst, but the real agony came from playing this game. A Kickstarter for Agony launched in 2016, successfully meeting the developer's goal. This led to a planned March 2018 release date, but the game was delayed for a few months. Agony initially received an adults-only rating for its over-the-top violence, forcing the developers to make drastic changes to achieve an M rating. They planned to release an adults-only patch, which ran into more legal issues. After much back and forth, the unrated version of the game was finally released in October of 2018. But the problem? It was a rushed and buggy mess that left gamers in agony. While the vast majority of players ended up disliking Agony, it did gain a small cult following. It's typically not thought of as a game that plays well, but the dark themes inspired by Dante's Inferno led to some creative and grotesque environments. Shock value or not, Agony certainly tried to push the boundaries of what can be shown in a game. Hey, I didn't say all these games would be good, did I? Moving right along, we now turn our attention to the 2015 release Hatred, a game that, ironically, most critics hated. When the concept of a game revolves around controlling a mass murderer and trying to kill as many innocent people as possible, you can probably understand why it's on a list like this. Hatred was so brutal in its content that Valve pulled the game. Now that's saying something. Interestingly, the game was reinstated on the Steam platform and even received an apology from Gabe Newell himself. Hatred's removal sparked many debates about artistic freedom, and for what it's worth, the game has its fans. The violence is extreme, with buckets of blood, limbs strewn about, and even mass shootings taking place. Yeah, this probably wouldn't fly in today's world. The crazy thing is, this game's not even that old. With a lead character that shows no remorse, violent depictions that hit perhaps too close to home for some, and other controversial subject matter, Hatred is another divisive release that has its fans. Some thought the game went too far, while others believed it was simply a game that shouldn't be taken seriously. Wherever you fall, Hatred definitely stretched the limits of violence and dark themes in a game. Okay, so including religious figures in a game is bound to attract scrutiny, and that was certainly the case with Fight of Gods. This indie fighting game featured characters like Jesus, Zeus, and Hades. Unsurprisingly, having Jesus as a fighter didn't sit well with all Christians. Jesus could bust up his opponents with fist attacks and use other magical abilities. Characters like Mohammed were also depicted in ways that some found controversial. Fight of Gods was ultimately pulled in 2017 after Valve decided it had seen enough. This led to an apology from the developer, and the game was eventually altered and re-released. Whether the game was in poor taste or not is up for debate, but religion has always been a heated topic in games. Everyone on this planet is a unique individual, and what's completely over the top, silly, and fun to one person could be the most offensive thing another has seen. Things got so out of hand with Fight of Gods that the Malaysian government not only fought to have the game removed, they booted Steam from the entire country. The issue was eventually resolved, but it can't be denied that Fight of Gods caused quite a few headaches. It's a weird game with an absolutely wild history. Okay, at number 3, I'm going to shout out the entire Galgun series, because any number of these games could be and has been deemed offensive depending on the audience. No shock here, as these first-person rail shooters often have you blasting scantily clad and far too young-looking anime girls in order to have them fall head over heels in love with you. The girls will moan, gasp, and blush as you blast away at them, hopefully with both hands on the controller, please. Many players are disgusted by this series, particularly in the way that it sexualizes its female characters. Reducing the girls to sexual objects which are pawns in the game obviously won't go over well with everyone. The series is no stranger to being censored either, and in some countries has even been banned entirely. Look, I've played a few of these, and for me personally, they fall more in the category of so over the top and ridiculous that it's impossible for me to feel offended by it, but again, a theme of this video, everyone is unique in their sensitivities. I will say, Western culture and Japanese culture tend to be very different, if that wasn't obvious. Either way, Galgun has always and will likely continue to push the boundaries of what can be shown in a game. Number 2, a self-proclaimed dating guru, Richard Laruna, is responsible for bringing us the fresh hell that is the Super Seducer series. Similar to our previous entry, the Galgun series, Super Seducer is often criticized for its depiction of women. I mean, it's in the title, the game is all about trying to seduce women, and honestly, having played one of these for the channel, I can confirm it's just as cringe as it sounds. If anything, the games might be worth a laugh just for the bad FMV acting, but the laugh isn't really worth the pain of actually playing in my experience. While the first 2 games still appear to be available on Steam, Super Seducer 3 seems to have been banned as Valve claims it violates its policies. The game basically lets you play the role of a douchebag, leans on stereotypes, and yeah, based on video footage alone, you can probably see why this series hasn't exactly been popular with everyone. That said, there are plenty of fans who credit the series for giving them confidence to talk to women. Laruna wouldn't be the guy I'd personally visit for advice on how to treat a lady, but to each their own. It's a really stupid and shallow experience overall, but controversial enough to make this list. And we've reached the end, thanks for making it this far. Last but not least, let's talk about a joke that didn't land, with the Devotion, which released in 2019 from Red Candle Games. The game was marred in controversy after a hidden reference to the president of China was discovered. An image within the game appeared to depict the president in a negative light, causing an uproar within the Chinese government. The president himself has a strong negative reaction to the meme used in the game, and with China having strict laws against political satire, Devotion quickly found itself in hot water. The removal of the content was called for immediately, and the game even faced protests. This led to poor sales and ultimately, despite an apology from Red Candle Games, the removal of the game from storefronts. While this was the biggest error made, Devotion also tackled some seriously heavy topics. The unfortunate part about the whole situation is that, by all accounts, Devotion's a great game. Thankfully, it can still be purchased directly from Red Candle Games. And that's all, folks. Did you ever play any of these controversial games? What are some others that we didn't include on this list? I'll be reading your comments below. Voice to the voiceless, everyone. See you on the channel for all the latest indie gaming reviews, news, impressions, and more.